What does it mean to be Hawaiian? Who is considered a Hawaiian? What does the Hawaiian culture mean to me? And how does it affect the way I live and share? These were just a few of the questions I pondered upon since Eunjung and I returned to Hawaii late January. In this article, you will be introduced to 50 Hawaiian words and their meanings. These definitions are meant to help you understand their basic or most common meanings. And I will do my best to pronounce them as correctly as possible. However, they cannot encompass the rich, multifaceted connotation embodied by Olelo Hawaii, Hawaiian language. I incorporated these Hawaiian terms in the article to express ho ihi, reverence and respect to the Hawaiian culture, and help you get a deeper understanding of the Hawaiian way of living. A few weeks ago, a local movie producer from Oahu asked me if I am a Hawaiian after I expressed my interest in her movie Waikiki. According to the description of the movie, in the cinematic allegory of love and loss, a hula dancer fights for survival and her sanity in the shadows of Waikiki for an unflinching glimpse into Pale Kaiko, or paradise, where there remains hope through human connection and reconnection to Aina, land that which nourishes. When I began to delve into these meaningful questions I shared above, I first recalled memories of a variety of experiences that guided me on a new ala loa pathway of life in Hawaii for the past 13 years. However, the more I reflected on these questions, the more evasive the answers seemed to be. From the first day I arrived on Oahu in mid-March 2008, there was a strange and dreamlike recognition that these beautiful islands were calling me back home. I felt that I belonged to these islands although I grew up in Switzerland and never visited Hawaii before. I had recurring, vivid moe uhane, or dreams, as soon as I arrived in Honolulu, which led me to wonder if I lived here in another lifetime. Dreams were a significant aspect of ancient Hawaiian spirituality and continue to play an important role in modern Hawaiian culture. Native Hawaiians believe that during sleep they sometimes receive visitations from akua, gods and goddesses, and aumakua, ancestral guardian spirits. There are several words in the Hawaiian language that describe different ways of dreaming. For example, moe pi'i pololei, clear prophetic dreams, require no interpretation as to the meaning of the dreams. Moe moe a, wishing dreams show something which may or may not be attainable in waking consciousness. And ho ike nakapo, revelations of the night, carry the power of prophecy. The healer Paul from the Big Island of Hawaii, who gifted me with a new life in 2008, had reoccurring dreams about me before we met. He also mentioned that I lived in Hawaii before, and one of the reasons he came to help me was that we were ohana, family, relatives then. I wrote my book Hawaiian Rebirths largely because I was inspired to share ka, mo, o meheu o Hawaii, the culture of Hawaii, and support readers to live a purposeful and meaningful life. From the very beginning of my Hawaiian journey, I found the usual tourist activities rather uninteresting. I was always more interested in the perspective and experiences of local people. Ever since, I do my best to learn about and share Hawaiian culture, values, practices, and history as best as I can, based on the principles of ikeloa, see much or seeing the bigger picture, and imi loa, seeking life in its highest form. Both words offer us guidance to live as a lifelong learner and view all experiences, whether positive or negative in our perception, as opportunities to grow. Nowadays, a lot of research can be done online or by reading books about the Hawaiian culture, geography, beliefs, people, history, law, and language. However, I always learn the best by visiting wahi, pana, or sacred places, or listening to mo o lelo ka ao, myth and legends from a Hawaiian cultural practitioner that brings me to ho o mama a, growing in familiarity with a person, place, or idea. It seems challenging to put into words what it really means to be Hawaiian. The more I learn, the more questions seem to arise about why I feel so connected with the Hawaiian culture, people, and land. To get a clearer picture, I believe it is important to look at the questions above from different viewpoints, such as the word Hawaiian, lineage and physical appearance, history, cultural choices, places, and values of Hawaiians, as well as what others say. As the most isolated, longest, and oldest Pae, Aina, archipelago on planet Earth, Hawaii is unique in many ways, including multicultural and ethnic diversity. Existing over 70 million years, the archipelago represents the full range of geological stages of an island's life cycle. According to the US Census statistics, the population is officially divided into 8 groups or different origins. To my surprise, I learned that out of an estimated population of 1.4 million, approximately only 156,000 are considered native Hawaiian, with the remainder being mixed races. 37% are Asian, 25% are white, and 11% are Hispanic or Latino. It was a distant past when people could tell Hawaiians from others by their outer appearances. The common people who were engaged in fishing, field labor, and the like were usually darker due to the exposure to the weather than the chiefs and women of rank who avoided the sun. The lines of recognition got blurred over time because only 54% of the people who currently live in Hawaii were born here, and because there are many intermarriages leading to various Hawaiian, Asian, European combinations. First, I thought I would get more clarity about who Hawaiians are by focusing on those who are engaged in Hawaiian cultural practices, traditions, and customs. The kupunas, the elders, and kahunas, experts, priests, healers, who live, embrace, and hanu, breathe the Hawaiian culture. However, I realized many Hawaiian cultural practitioners are of multi-ethnic ancestry, and these Hawaiian spiritual cultural practices and traditions do not just belong to Hawaii, but also to other Pacific islands. I also learned that in ancient times, probably the most important criteria for how much someone is Hawaiian lay not in the birth chart, but in their birth chant. Such credentials had to be established by the chanting of their genealogy. By looking at the legal and constitutional language, I further found out that there are 2 formal political definitions. One is Native Hawaiian with a small n, and the other Native Hawaiian with a capital N. But does it really give us a clear answer to what it means to be Hawaiian by studying the statistics or who is engaged in Hawaiian cultural practices? Probably not quite yet. So let us continue by researching the word Hawaiian itself. When Hawaii was still a sovereign nation, the word referred to anyone who was from the place called Hawaii. irrespective of ancestry. Did you know that Hawaiian is not a native word either? True Hawaiian words always end with a vowel, never with a consonant, in this case, the N. Hawaiian culture is based upon age-old mo, olelo, ka, ao, myth and legends, as well as akua, gods and goddesses. For example, Maui, a demigod who pulled up the island from the seabed, or Pele, the goddess of volcanoes, fire, and lightning, and her sister, Poliahu, a snow goddess. Like every other language, Hawaiian language is more than just a tool for communication. It is like a window that allows us to look into and connect with the culture. The most well-known word of the Hawaiian culture is aloha. There are many ways to describe aloha. It is more than just a greeting to say hello or goodbye. Aloha is an expression of love and a sense of being. One could also say aloha means living in harmony with the people and land around you, with sympathy, grace, and kindness. When I asked Filippo Solatorio, a cultural practitioner, and Kumu, a teacher I had the honor to meet 3 times on Molokai, how he would explain the essence of aloha, he beautifully described it as sharing the happiness of the breath of life. I usually start my emails, blogs, and videos with the word aloha, not with hello or hi, because I love the warmth and kindness that the word emanates and what this word represents in the deepest sense, the unconditional extension of trust and friendship, even to strangers. I believe that especially during these unprecedented times of uncertainty, aloha indeed can be a remedy for the world, as Auntie Pilaipaki said. You can read more about her on page 105 in my book, but only if we effectively practice in life what we speak about. Peter Apo, a founding member of the Native Hawaiian Hospitality Association, expressed it this way: the Hawaiian vocabulary is loaded with behavior guiding language, and no matter how accomplished a person becomes in any Hawaiian cultural pursuit, or how high they rise into prominent positions of community leadership, if they don't practice the values, they are missing the essence of being Hawaiian. I realized that there is an ongoing dispute over whether a requisite to being a Hawaiian is having native Hawaiian ancestry. In Hawaii, where blood and ancestry probably matter more than in any other US state, a legal challenge poses this question: who is sufficiently Hawaiian? For example, Tai Tegan from the University of Hawaii's Ethnic Studies Department said, "I think being local means spending a significant amount of time in the islands, so you are rooted in the community." On the other hand, those who are ethnically Hawaiian do not appreciate when haole, individuals who are not native Hawaiian or Polynesians, claim that they are Hawaiian, unless they have parents with Hawaiian blood. They say that you must have native Hawaiian ancestors to be considered Hawaiian, and even when you are born in Hawaii, it does not necessarily mean that you are a Hawaiian. If you grew up on the Hawaiian Islands and continue to do so, you are referred to as a Hawaii resident. In this context, it is also important to look at the history of Hawaii. About 1,500 years ago, Polynesians arrived in Hawaii after navigating the ocean using only the stars to guide them. For a long time, Hawaii was an independent nation with a diverse culture that was developed over centuries. Still, in 1843, Great Britain and France recognized Hawaii as an independent and sovereign nation, and the US did so 1 year later in 1844. The Hawaiian Kingdom had treaties with at least 17 other states. things started to change drastically when the constitution of the Kingdom of Hawaii was signed, stripping the Hawaiian monarchy of much of its authority in 1887. Did you know that later the Kingdom of Hawaii was illegally overthrown in 1893? It was then annexed by the United States in 1898, and later Hawaii became a US state in 1959. With the overthrow, a restructuring of Hawaii's law ensued, and everything Hawaiian became illegal, including communal ownership of land, access to the sea, and most of all the ability to practice traditional of dance and sports. It is saddening that Hawaiians have been denied their religion and their traditional culture for many decades. They have suffered the loss of their ancestral land, the destruction of their cultural roots, and the rewriting of their history. Looking at present time, it is a heartbreaking reality that the economic and demographic trends in Hawaii forced the native Hawaiians to leave from the place they were born. Due to Hawaii's high cost of living and lack of decently paying jobs, the minimum wage is currently as low as $10.10. Many locals had to leave the islands or end up as the homeless on the streets or in parks. Discrepancy between the rich and poor is drastic in some areas of Honolulu, where homeless people are found in the background of high-rise luxury apartment buildings, often having to move around because of the police checks. According to 2018 statistics, someone working at the minimum wage mentioned above would have to work 109 hours, not a month, but a week, to be able to afford a market rate one-bedroom apartment. Such financial burden has drastic impact on the island community. 1/3 of the people who expect to move away from Hawaii mentioned housing prices as their main reason for leaving, whereas nearly 1/3 of all condominium units are owned by people from outside the state of Hawaii. Higher cost for electricity, gas, and grocery compared with the US mainland further add to these challenges. Those who stay in the islands often face enormous difficulties, and many must work 2 or even 3 jobs to somehow survive in a place idealized as Pale Kaiko, paradise, for enticing tourists to Hawaii. While the locals almost never have time to enjoy it for themselves, their jobs often are to sell paradise and a glossy version of Hawaiian culture to visitors. Paradise comes with a price, and affordable housing in Honolulu could soon include 2-bedroom homes costing $1 million. There is a video on YouTube called Anthony Bourdain Parts Unknown Hawaii. By watching this video, you will find another explanation of what it means to be Hawaiian from someone on Molokai. Hano, Hano, Naehu, a fish pond, caretaker, aloha, aina, warrior, and slam poet was born and raised on Molokai, on lands his ohana has stewarded for countless generations. At Kea Vanui, the largest fish pond on Molokai, where the formal restoration process began in 2001, Hano Hano explains the following to Anthony, starting from 22.5 minutes mark of the video. You cannot be our blood. Our blood is Ka Naka. You cannot be Ka Naka. Hawaiian is our nationality. You see this? What we are standing on? This is Aina, the land, that which nourishes. And it matters so much that if you love this place and you don't want to develop it, destroy it, or abuse it, then we are on the same team. But if you are eyeing this place and its resources as a money-making vehicle for yourself, we are enemies. It does not matter what race, religion, what sex you are. If you love this place and you can malama, care and nurture our aina, the way we love it and our ancestors love it, then we can be more than friends. Then we can be family. From a solely ethnical point of view, being Hawaiian is reserved for residents with Hawaiian ancestry, descendants from the Polynesian people who discovered the islands and were their original inhabitants and have lived in these islands for centuries. They are referred to as Ka-Naka Maoli, the indigenous people of Hawaii. Even indigenous Hawaiians who were not born on the islands are still Hawaiian people, or Ka-Naka Oiwi. If you are not ethnically Hawaiian, you could still claim that you are Hawaiian born. Furthermore, there is another term, islander. In the US Census, the term Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander refers to people having origins in any of the original people of Hawaii, Guam, Tonga, Samoa, Fiji, New Zealand, and the Marshalls or other Pacific Islands. Residents of any ethnicity who are born and raised on Hawaii or have simply lived here for a long time may also be referred to as Kama Aina, or children of the land. However, living in Hawaii does not necessarily entitle you to become Kamaina, a child of the land. Some people say once you get your first Hawaii driver's license, you automatically become Kamaina. However, in order for someone to be referred to as Kamaina in the truest sense, it is essential to have deep appreciation of the land, be spiritually invested, feel called to take care of the land, the plants, the animals, and the people, and appreciate and practice the values of the Hawaiian culture. The term Hawaiian also refers to other aspects such as geography, culture, traditions, values, and customs. Other than learning from local cultural practitioners, visiting sacred Hawaiian places, offering ho o kupo, offerings, gifts, and meditating at these sites provided me with insights beyond time and space. These visits proved to be more vibrational and energetic experiences compared to my learning through online research, reading books, and listening to Mo Olelo Ka'ao, myths and legends shared by Hawaiian cultural practitioners. After Paul, the first Hawaiian healer I've ever met, worked with me in 2008, I developed a yearning to visit and meditate at Heiau, ancient Hawaiian temples or sacred sites. It did not make sense at all to me logically at the time because I grew up in Switzerland and just had arrived in Hawaii a few weeks earlier. Since then, visiting sacred temple sites in Hawaii became one of my most cherished passions and missions. For the past 13 years, I have offered my prayers and meditated at more than 50 heiaus on all the Hawaiian Islands. Over time, many of these rock-built structures at heiau have disappeared and diminished from the landscape in Hawaii. They began declining and eventually got destroyed after 1819, the year King Kamehameha I passed away, when the end of traditional religion was declared by King Liholiho, Kamehameha II, and Queen Ka'ahu Manu. Missionaries' opinions of heiau as monuments of superstition and madness further added to the decline of their upkeep and in many cases to the dismantling of these traditional Hawaiian religious artifacts. However, there are now several revitalization projects of traditional hale, house or building, and heiau, including Pi Ilani Hale on Maui, which is the largest heiau in the entire Pacific area. Such building practices have become places for teaching, and they provide opportunities for gathering of the local communities. It serves to restore and revive these building practices that come from the living traditional Hawaiian values which were passed on over many generations from kuhi kuhi, pu uone, which are master architects and engineers. Kumu Palani from Maui has been recognized as one of the key people who helped bring back the customs and techniques of traditional Hawaiian hale building. He recognized that the revival of traditional Hawaiian hale and heiau building would work only if it coincided with a revival and strengthening of Hawaiian hana kupono protocols and values such as la ulima, many hands working together, ma lama aina, to care for and relate to the land, and maiau, to be thorough and careful in work. Such vahi pana, or sacred places, remind us that the land is not just a resource to take from, but that it is sacred and that it is family. This is foundational to understanding and experiencing aloha aina. Aina can be described as that which nourishes and encompasses land, ocean, heavens, land-based water systems, plants, and animals. Ike kupuna, or ancestral knowledge, teaches that land is a relation and perspective carried in the idea of aloha aina, a way of life that is evident in Hawaiian practices such as showing ho ihi, reverence and respect for all life forms by asking permission to take from the environment and treating land as a family member. Living with po ayapuni, nature cycles, by refraining from fishing during spawning cycles of marine life. Taking from aina only what is needed and using what is taken. Planting, fishing, or harvesting by phases of the moon and according to Kaulana Mahina, the lunar calendar. Following Hana Kupono protocol such as Oli, a type of chant, Pule, prayer, and Ho o Kupo, offering when visiting sites. When Hawaiian cultural practitioners get trained to develop pilina aina, intimate connection to the lands, it includes lololo, observation documentation, ho ohano hano, dignity and respect, and hana kaulike, justified work. For example, lololo involves group observations of the natural elements and wildlife from before dawn to sunrise, including conscious observation of natural resources. Over time, new insights grow regarding seasonal changes as observations are analyzed and documented. This lies in sharp contrast to the fast-paced way of living in Western societies. Cultural places in Hawaii are connected to generations of native Hawaiians. Often, I noticed visitors at such sites who seem unaware of their significance. Instead of showing ho ihi, reverence and respect, they take selfies, leave trash, drink alcohol, or even walk on the rock walls surrounding heiau, the ancient Hawaiian temple or sacred sites. In such moments, I feel conflicted if I should say something or not, because although I feel very connected to these sacred places and I'm aware that it is kapu, prohibited, restricted. I'm not a Hawaiian myself. I feel honored and blessed that 10 years ago, before I left for the Big Island for my 35th birthday, I met the kahuna, expert priest healer, here on Kauai, who told me that I have to go to the Big Island to honor the goddess Pele. She mentioned of 3 important aspects to remember when you enter a sacred place. First, acknowledge the uhana, spirits or the ancestors of the land, and ask their permission to enter. Second, have a specific purpose for the visit and carry respect for the ancestors of the land and the land itself. Third, bring aloha to that place and be humble and grateful during and after your visit. So, can I or people from other countries be a Hawaiian? The short answer is no, unless they have parents with Hawaiian blood. However, people of all background can and should live according to the principle of aloha aina, no matter where they are on this beautiful planet Earth. It is my sincere hope that this article inspires you to aloha aina when you visit Hawaii next time. By doing so, won't make me or you a Kanaka, indigenous people of Hawaii, but we certainly can become ohana, family, and grow into becoming kama aina, children of the land. Being part of ohana means to ho ihi, have reverence and respect, commit to understanding the culture, the land, the history, and genealogy of Hawaii, Malama, care and nurture for it, and most importantly support Hawaii and its culture to thrive. As Hano Hano Naehu eloquently said, when you give to the Aina, it feeds and reciprocates you in ways that nourish your whole existence. This resonates with me deeply since I wrote in my book, Hawaiian Rebirth. In any relationship, it's important to be willing to give first before asking what you want to receive. Because Hawaii, the land, the animals, and the people and the culture gifted and blessed me with so much, I want to give back by educating readers and visitors about Hawaii, the land, and the local culture. Since I moved here and after my book Hawaiian Rebirth came out in English and German, I often receive emails from people asking me about Hawaii, where to stay, good places to visit, what they can do while in Hawaii, and so on. They expect me to give straightforward answers to complex questions. However, I am hesitant to answer such questions on a surface level without addressing the unique energy and vibration the Hawaiian Islands hold and what I'm writing about in this article. The quality of their time here in the Hawaiian Islands will largely depend on where people are on their life's journey and their intentions as to why they want to visit the islands. Whereas someone may highly resonate with a particular Hawaiian island or area, another may not at all be drawn to or feel a special connection with the same island or area. In conclusion, I am not a Hawaiian. However, as someone who loves Hawaii, its culture and people, I feel committed to assisting Malihini visitors and foreigners with their journey in much more meaningful ways by helping raise awareness about what I addressed in this article. It is my sincere wish to help the visitors learn more about, respect and appreciate the Hawaiian culture and connect with the sacredness of the islands deeply for their healing and bring mutual blessings through harmonious exchanges between the visitors and the locals and the land. I believe these special, sacred energies of the Hawaiian Islands can be a catalyst for transformation for those who come to the islands with the right intentions and willingness to shift, just as my life was deeply transformed and my life's direction was turned around to align with my life's purpose. If you are interested to visit Kauai or any other Hawaiian island, I can offer guiding hands for deeper understanding of your life's journey through cultivating right relationships between you and the Hawaiian Islands. Then we can together, ho okipa, be of service to not only your life's journey, but also to the Hawaiian Islands and the locals, and ultimately to Gaia and the universe. It would be my honor and pleasure to support and guide you along your journey of healing, awakening, and transformation. Mahalo nui loa. Thank you very much.